Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Lift. Today we are going over some positive stories, some things that I've seen today, January 8th, 2026. We've got some really interesting stories today, including New York City having an interesting new data that came out. We've got some new nutrition guidelines, a new study about hugs, and something to do with rental companies and large institutions owning these rental companies. We're going to break it all down today, January 8th, 2026. Thank you so much for being here. It is a beautiful and sunny day here in North Carolina. My name is Ryan Kearns, and I'm glad to be here with you. Just 1 second while I get something set up real quick. All right, we're all set. Now, again, today we're going over some positive news stories. We're going to break some things down that not a lot of people know. There we go. Sorry about that. I lost my microphone for a minute there, but I fixed it. Sorry about that. I was saying today we're going to go over some positive news stories that other companies do not cover. The reason people don't cover good news stories is because it doesn't get attention as much and as easily as negative news stories that pull our attention. That's just how our basic brains kind of work, is we're attracted to negative stories. And so it doesn't do us much good health-wise and happiness-wise to constantly be forced to think about negative things. And it's my job to bring you some positive things, some things you might not have otherwise known about. And we're going to break it all down today. We're going to talk about all these new positive developments in the world that are going on today. So let me just pull it up and we'll jump right into it today. Okay, so number one, new study finds the reason for why warm hugs feel so good. This could shape the future of mental health treatments. I thought this was really interesting. This will be a quick one. Nothing too crazy here. It's just that they figured out that temperature has a lot to do with why people like warm hugs. I mean, it's in the title, warm hugs, right? And so apparently our brain kind of reads this change in temperature as something positive for the human body. So for most of academic history, temperature has been purely as a psychological signal, but Dr. Laura Crucianelli and Dr. Gerardo Salvato wanted to dive into thermoception, or our perception of changes in skin temperature. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence to suggest that temperature changes how we feel in our bodies, but they wanted to take it a step further. So they reviewed decades of research in neuroscience, psychology, and clinical science to expand the understanding of bodily self-awareness to include temperature. And this work reveals a previously overlooked pathway through which the body communicates with the brain. So temperature is actually a new pathway that they're figuring out actually matters a lot. Temperature is one of our most ancient senses. Warmth is one of the earliest signals of protection. So we feel it in the womb and early caregiving and whenever someone holds us close. It keeps us alive, but it also helps us feel like ourselves. That is absolutely fascinating. Love myself a good, nice, warm hug. And I just wanted to share that with you today. I think it's really interesting, pretty cool. And, obviously everyone likes warm hugs. Now we know why. By studying how the brain interprets the warm and cold, we can begin to understand how the body shapes the mind. And it's not always the mind shaping the body. Really, really fascinating stuff. Thermal signals play a fundamental role in clinical conditions. People with altered temperature regulation may develop pathological conditions. So, yeah, really cool. Hugs, one of the main reasons we love them so much is because they make us feel warm. And when we feel warm, we feel safe and we feel protected. So, I mean, intuitively and logically that makes sense, but now they're diving deep into the science behind it, and I think it's really interesting. Up next, New York City had the lowest number of shootings in history last year in 2025. So, of all the challenges that the new mayor will face taking charge of the biggest city in the US, shootings isn't one of them. The Big Apple recorded fewer in 2025 than any other year on record. In 2025, they recorded 688 shooting incidents. That sounds like a lot, but knowing New York City is a very, very populated city, there's millions and millions of people there. So that's actually 66 fewer shootings than the benchmark year, which was 2018. This is really, really cool, really interesting. And you know what? I just want to say real quick, this has nothing to do with politics for me. This whole show, everything that I'm about, if you need to know, I'm actually a registered independent. I don't care about politics. I don't, care who's the president that much. I mean, I do my part by voting every year, but I'm not like totally entrenched in politics on one side or the other. I just think we should look at it with a little bit of perspective, and usually the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And so this show has nothing to do with politics. While I will mention people that are in politics like RFK Jr. or Trump, I don't really have any say in how well they're doing or any of that stuff. So don't get it twisted. Don't think that this is about politics. It's not. I'm just reporting on the things that I'm finding and the things that I find interesting and positive news out there that other people are not talking about. So that's really, really interesting. New York City, lowest number of shootings in its history last year. Not in just in the past 5 years, not in the past 10 years, in history. I thought that was fascinating. And, you'll never hear about this story in mainstream news. So I wanted to make sure that more people know about this because I find it fascinating. Up next, RFK Jr. just announced a new nutrition guidelines. So he's pushing more protein and less processed foods. The HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins announced new nutrition guidelines, which, let's be honest, we are well overdue for this. As someone who has been certified as a holistic nutritionist, I'm very well aware that the standard American diet, the SAD diet, is not up to par. It doesn't work. It's basically based not in reality. It's not how to eat healthy. It doesn't help children eat healthy. It doesn't help people, get what they need out of the food. So the most significant changes under these updated guidelines, I'm just going to keep it nice and simple here, is prioritizing protein over carbs and cutting out processed foods like white bread, chips, and candy. I'm assuming they also mean pasta. They also mean, sugar. And now we know. I mean, it's not like we didn't know that before, but now it's going to be included in the nutrition guidelines, which is a great thing. We're moving in the right direction when it comes to nutrition and eating healthy every single day. I absolutely love this. The dietary guidelines inform what is served in school lunches and included in federal nutrition programs, which makes them absolutely crucial because, it's what we're feeding our kids. It's what we're feeding kids in school every single day, right? And if we raise kids on sugar and white bread and chips and candy, what do we expect to happen? Why are we surprised when they end up with higher incidences of ADD and more psychological problems, more health problems, a massive rise in obesity and a massive rise in diabetes? We can nip this in the bud and stop it at an early age as long as we're using the correct dietary guidelines for Americans. And I'm really excited and happy that this is changing. Finally, we're seeing movement in a positive direction for the nutrition guidelines. And finally, U.S. is going to ban, he says the U.S. is going to ban large investors from buying homes. President Donald Trump said he's immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes. Now, why does this matter? Well, if institutions are the ones buying up single family homes. That means we're forced to rent from these institutions, and that means that we end up becoming slaves to these institutions and constantly owing them money every single month. They end up owning all of the land, all of the houses, and all of the places where people can live. That is not a good thing. We do not want that to happen. And, people have been sounding the alarm on this for years about how BlackRock is owning all of the houses and, how large institutions are buying up all of the single family homes. Well, now there's finally change in a positive direction where people are not allowed, institutions are not allowed to buy single family homes. I think that's absolutely amazing. As somebody who I am a renter, I don't actually believe that buying a home will help me in any significant way in my life. I like the idea of being free to move around. I like the idea of just paying my rent and having all of my problems basically solved by the person I'm renting from rather than myself. I like that idea. I'm a renter personally, and I rent single family homes. And I've noticed that recently I can only rent from large companies. I can only rent from basically huge conglomerates that own lots and lots of buildings. And that's fine and good and all, but the problem is when problems come up, it is difficult to get answers. It's slow. It takes a while. I had my shed catch on fire recently, and it was some freak accident where like maybe an animal chewed a wire or something, and it was an electrical fire, but it took weeks to even get an answer from the rental company about whether or not they were going to cover this and fix this and if insurance covered it or not. And that's just because they're a huge bloated company where everything takes so long. When I got to the bottom of it, I found out, we asked our manager who had to ask another manager, and because this is such an expensive thing that happened, we had to run it through all these different managers to find out if we could cover it or not. So weeks and weeks later, where meanwhile we have toxic, burnt up stuff in our backyard. Our kids can't even go and play back there, just sitting there. And we feel this should have been cleaned up weeks ago. It's finally being cleaned up, but it took so long because it's such a huge bloated company that moves slowly. And if instead it was a regular, man or woman landlord that owned the home, I would probably be able to get in touch with them same day, probably get things moving immediately, because I'd be able to reach out to the owner of the home right away instead of some big giant company that needs to run through layers of management and figure out if they're going to cover it or not, and then finally take action. Instead, I would get the person that owns it on the first try, and that would change everything. So I think this is an absolutely amazing thing. I mean, people hate Donald Trump. People love Donald Trump. I don't really care either way. I'm just saying I think this is a good change that's going to help a lot of people. And I think it's a good thing to not have corporations owning all of our homes. And I hope that this ends up working out. It does say it's just something that he said. It isn't actually something that happened yet. So I'll keep my eyes peeled on this, and hopefully that change does happen. That'll be great. So that is all of the positive news I wanted to share with you today. Now, as always, we will get into our daily law. This is when I go into the daily laws by Robert Greene. We pick out a passage for the day, and we read that passage, and we reflect on what it means in our life. So I do this every single day, 12 p.m. I go live. I share some positive news stories so we can feel good about the world and our life. And then we go into the daily laws by Robert Greene, 366 meditations on power, seduction, mastery, strategy, and human nature. Allows us to get to know ourselves a little bit more, allows us to think about our life, reflect on our life, make changes in our life, and move forward in a healthy, positive way. So I absolutely love this book. And the cool part is it has a passage for every single day. So today's January 8th. I'll turn to the page that says January 8th and read the passage. It is that simple and that cool. So let's see here. Here we go. Oh, this is kind of a big one. We got almost a full pager here. Usually a lot of times they're only like half a page. This time it's a full pager. January 8th, occupy your own niche. As a child growing up in Madras, India in the late 1950s, V.S. Ramachandran knew he was different. In his loneliness, he would often wander along the beach, and soon he became fascinated by the incredible variety of seashells that washed up on shore. He began to collect them and study the subject in detail. Soon he was drawn to the strangest varieties of seashells, such as the xenophora, an organism that collects discarded shells and uses them for camouflage. In a way, he was like the xenophora, an anomaly. In nature, these anomalies often serve a larger evolutionary purpose. They can lead to the occupation of new ecological niches, offering a greater chance of survival. Over the years, he transferred this boyhood interest into other subjects, human anatomical abnormalities, peculiar phenomena in chemistry, and so on. He went to medical school, then became a professor in visual psychology at the University of California at San Diego. He became intrigued by the phenomenon of phantom limbs, people who have had an arm or leg amputated and yet still feel a paralyzing pain in the missing limb. He proceeded to conduct experiments on phantom limb subjects. These experiments led to some exciting discoveries about the brain itself, as well as novel way to relieve such patients of their pain. Studying anomalous neurological disorders would be the subject to which he could devote the rest of his life. It was as if he had come full circle to the days of collecting the rarest forms of seashells. Daily law. Embrace your strangeness. Identify what makes you different. Fuse those things together and become an anomaly. Very interesting. Very fascinating. I'm trying to reflect a little bit on this. What makes me different? What makes me an anomaly? I think my love for creating videos and creating content online, mixed with my devotion and passion for helping people with Lyme disease, is what makes a big part of what makes me different. But I also love a lot of other things too, like sports and extreme sports like snowboarding, or regular sports like soccer. So I mean, like, we're all a little bit different. We're all a little bit weird. We have our little quirks and weirdness about us, and if we can embrace that and use it to drive forward rather than to hinder us or hold us back, I think that's the message here. And I think that that resonates with me deeply, and I like it. I understand it. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today. So again, quick recap. Trump says he's going to ban large investors from buying single-family homes. I think that's great. RFK has created new dietary guidelines that finally make sense and reduce carbohydrates and prioritize protein. That's amazing. New York City had its record lowest year in history for shootings. That's great. And a new study found why people love warm hugs so much, and the reason why has a lot to do with temperature over other things instead. So that's all very fascinating, but also really positive stories, really cool stuff that you probably won't hear on a regular news program, but you heard here today on Lunchtime Lift. I'm your host, Ryan Kearns. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and I'll see you tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Bye-bye. Love you. See you soon.